There's a reason ghost stories never go out of style. No matter how rational we claim to be, no matter how firmly our feet are planted in science and logic, there's something about the unknown that lingers. A sound in an empty room, a figure glimpsed from the corner of the eye. These aren't just legends or tales told around a campfire. Some people swear what they've seen is real. Today, we count down 5 chilling encounters that might just shake your belief in what's possible. Even the most hardened skeptics were left disturbed by these unexplained events. But this is more than just a countdown. This is an immersive journey through 5 terrifying realities, each grounded in personal testimony, cultural history, and the eerie feeling that maybe, just maybe, something watches from the shadows. As we explore these tales, we'll not only recount the events, but also dive into the psychology of fear, the patterns that emerge across supernatural encounters, and why the human brain remains both a believer and a skeptic. I worked night shifts at the hospital for nearly a year before I saw her. Claire had always considered herself practical. As a nurse, she was trained to assess reality in terms of symptoms, vitals, and procedures. But one night she stepped into something no textbook could prepare her for. The abandoned West Wing of St. Adelaide General had been shut down for over a decade. Leaks in the roof had caused mold issues, and power was intermittent at best. Yet, due to renovations in the main building, some staff had to pass through it during certain shifts. That night, Claire was on her way back from delivering a fiel when she saw the figure. The woman wore a faded hospital gown, her bare feet silent on the tile. Her eyes were sunken but locked onto Claire's. And then she turned and glided down the hallway. Claire didn't think. Instinctively, she followed. Perhaps a patient was lost? But as she turned the corner, she found only darkness. The air was thick and cold, no footsteps, no sound. Just the scent of rubbing alcohol and something else, like old flowers, decaying. She later found out that a woman had died during a power outage in that wing, her emergency call unheard. This wasn't the only report. Over the years, other night staff had quietly confessed to seeing the same figure. Always around 3 a.m., always near the old room 9B. But no one talked about it during the day, as if acknowledging it gave it more power. The psychology of hospital hauntings is particularly potent. Hospitals are places of both healing and death, liminal zones where emotion runs high, and energy, as many claim, tends to linger. Some parapsychologists argue that repeated traumatic events can imprint on a location, creating residual hauntings, essentially replays of moments trapped in time. Claire's encounter, while terrifying, fits this theory well. I thought I was just hearing her come in late every night, until I found out she died 2 years ago. Emily had just moved into her freshman dorm, a century-old red brick building with high ceilings and creaky floors. The university prided itself on tradition, and the dorm had a reputation as one of the oldest on campus. She was excited, anxious, and eager to make new friends. Her assigned roommate, Maya, was almost never around, often staying with her boyfriend across town. That suited Emily fine, as she enjoyed the solitude. But it wasn't really solitude. Almost every night around midnight, Emily would hear the door creak open softly. Then footsteps, slow, steady, crossing the wooden floor. The sound of the drawers sliding. Sometimes even the rustle of sheets, as if someone were crawling into bed. At first, Emily thought it was Maya. But one night, curious and a little annoyed, she stayed up and waited. Midnight came. The door creaked. The footsteps moved inside, but the room remained empty. Emily flicked on her lamp. Nothing. No one. To make sure she wasn't imagining things, she bought a cheap voice recorder and left it on one night. The next morning, she played it back. There were the footsteps, the sound of a drawer opening, and, horrifyingly, a soft, rhythmic humming. A lullaby, then a whisper. Her name. Shaken, she took the recording to the resident assistant. The RA listened silently, then confessed. Emily's room had once belonged to a girl named Lila, who had died in her sleep from an undiagnosed heart condition, exactly 2 years ago, to the day Emily had moved in. Lila had been a quiet girl who loved singing to herself at night. Emily packed her things that evening. She didn't wait for Maya to come back. She didn't want to sleep in that room another night. This experience echoes many classic phantom roommate phenomena: disembodied footsteps, unexplained noises, and a sense of presence. College dorms, with their constantly shifting occupants and intense emotional energy, often serve as hotspots for hauntings. Psychologists might argue these episodes stem from stress, sleep deprivation, or auditory hallucinations, common among students. But such explanations do little to soothe someone who hears their name whispered in the dark. It wasn't just one person. Everyone saw it. In the late 1970s, the Hartson family, Peggy, a single mother, and her 4 children, moved into a modest home in Enfield, North London. What began as a typical domestic life quickly turned into a media storm, police case, and supernatural battleground. It started small. Strange knocking on the walls, furniture moving ever so slightly, objects disappearing. The children complained about cold spots in their rooms and the sound of whispers when no one else was there. Things escalated. Drawers began opening by themselves. Chairs slid across the floor. And most disturbingly, 11-year-old Janet began speaking in a voice that didn't belong to her. The voice was deep, rough, and identified itself as Bill, a former resident of the house who had died years earlier. Neighbors witnessed it. Police officers called to the scene confirmed seeing a chair slide across the room. Reporters came. So did members of the Society for Psychical Research, including Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair. Over the course of more than a year, over 30 individuals reported witnessing phenomena in the house. Janet's possession became the central focus. In recordings still available today, you can hear her speaking in a gravelly voice, discussing events and memories she shouldn't know. During interviews, the voice would answer questions directed at Bill, even when Janet's mouth was visibly still. Researchers debated whether it was a subconscious trick or something more sinister. Skeptics called it a hoax. They pointed out moments when the children were caught bending spoons or faking movement. But even those same skeptics admitted that not all phenomena could be explained. One photographer captured a still frame of Janet mid-air. Some say levitating, others say jumping. But her posture seemed unnatural, twisted, as if yanked by something unseen. What makes the Enfield case unique is the volume of testimony, the sheer duration of the haunting, and the international attention it received. For believers, it is one of the most well-documented poltergeist cases in history. For skeptics, it's a complex mix of psychological suggestion, media influence, and adolescent mischief. But whatever your belief, there's no denying that something disturbed the peace at 284 Green Street, and its shadow still lingers today. She was in the back seat one moment, gone the next. On a stretch of rural highway winding through the dense outskirts of Baguio, Philippines, there's a local legend that refuses to fade. They call her the White Lady of Locan Road. Pale, silent, and usually seen at night, she's said to appear suddenly at the roadside, thumb extended, eyes downcast. Many drivers say they've picked her up only to have her vanish mid-ride. Joel, a delivery driver with 10 years of experience, was one of them. It was just past midnight when he saw a woman in a long white dress standing on the shoulder near the curve. Thinking she was in distress, he slowed and rolled down the window. "Do you need a ride?" he asked. She nodded wordlessly and got in. She never spoke, never moved, just sat there, hands folded. About 5 kilometers down the road, Joel looked in the rearview mirror, and she was gone. The passenger door was closed. There had been no sound. He slammed on the brakes, heart racing. He got out, checked the back seat. Empty. But the seatbelt was still buckled. When he told locals, no one seemed surprised. "She appears to good men," one elder said, to remind them the dead still travel. Stories of the White Lady stretch back decades, with reported sightings dating as far back as World War II. Some say she was a student murdered on her way home. Others believe she's a wartime nurse, still seeking help. Culturally, the White Lady is a powerful archetype in Southeast Asia, the silent, sorrowful ghost, often representing unresolved injustice or trauma. These sightings often occur on winding, dangerous roads where fatal accidents are common. Psychologically, such tales might be viewed as cautionary myths or as the mind's way of manifesting fear in darkness. But for those who've seen her, she's no myth. She's real, and she's still waiting. We thought we were going crazy, but we all saw it. In a quiet suburban town in Ohio, the Ramirez family moved into what they believed would be their forever home, a charming 2-story farmhouse, complete with a wraparound porch, apple trees, and a rustic barn out back. For the first few months, everything seemed perfect. But as autumn settled in, the house began to shift. First, it was the sounds, tapping on the windows, footsteps upstairs when no one was there, and the occasional whisper in the hallway. Dismissing it as the creaks of an old home, they paid little attention until things escalated. The children began waking with night terrors, screaming about the shadow man in the corner. Objects moved by themselves. A heavy mirror fell from the wall without cause, shattering inches from the youngest child. The family dog refused to enter the living room. Doors slammed violently. Lights flickered even during perfect weather. Then came the apparitions. Mr. Ramirez described waking in the dead of night to find a woman standing at the foot of his bed, pale, hollow-eyed, and weeping silently. His wife saw her too, days later, rocking in an empty nursery chair that hadn't moved in years. The children all described different figures: a tall man with no face, a child crawling on the ceiling, a voice that mimicked their mother's call but came from behind closed doors. Desperate, the Ramirezes called in a local priest who blessed the house. For a week, peace returned, but then it returned with fury, knocks so loud they shook the floorboards, shadows darting past open doors, and a final encounter that drove them out for good. It was during a thunderstorm. The family had huddled together in the living room when a deep growl emanated from the basement. The door flew open on its own, and a gust of freezing air poured up the steps. What followed was a roar, inhuman, primal. They left that night, never to return. Their belongings, their memories, and their dream of a peaceful life remained inside that house. The house has since sat vacant. Locals avoid the road. Some say they see lights inside. Others claim they hear laughter or crying from the woods surrounding the lot. What's perhaps most disturbing is that the Ramirez family had no history of mental illness, no financial gain in telling their story, and no intention of going public. Their tales spread by word of mouth, gaining traction only after neighbors began reporting strange phenomena of their own. Haunted house stories are among the most enduring in folklore, and for good reason. A home is meant to be a sanctuary, a place of safety. When that space turns against you, the betrayal cuts deep. Psychologists believe the intensity of these hauntings may stem from collective family stress or mass hysteria. But how do you explain the matching descriptions, the shared visions, the physical evidence? Perhaps the scariest hauntings are not the loudest, but the ones that leave, quietly, unexpectedly, only to return when we think they're gone. Across all 5 encounters, a pattern emerges: silence followed by sound, stillness ruptured by presence, and the overwhelming feeling that someone or something is there. Whether in hospitals, dormitories, highways, or homes, these stories share eerie similarities: apparitions appearing at night, cold spots, disembodied voices, and unexplained emotional disturbances. These elements aren't random. They form the language of the supernatural, experienced by people of all ages, cultures, and backgrounds. But what do we make of it? Are these experiences glimpses into an unseen dimension, or simply the byproducts of an overstimulated mind seeking patterns in chaos? Psychologists often turn to sleep paralysis, auditory hallucinations, and group suggestion as explanations. Folklorists remind us that every culture has ghost stories because death, and our fear of it, is universal. Yet, even with all these frameworks, the question lingers. Why do so many people, separated by time and geography, report the same phenomena? One answer might lie in what Jung called the collective unconscious, a reservoir of archetypes and symbols shared by all humanity. Ghosts, perhaps, are symbols that tap into our deepest anxieties about death, loneliness, injustice, or the unknown. But what if they are more than that? What if these symbols sometimes leak into reality? Even the most skeptical minds are shaken when confronted with consistency and sincerity in eyewitness accounts. A child describing a former tenant they could never have known, a voice on tape speaking when no one was in the room, a figure seen by multiple people in the same place over years. These aren't easy to dismiss. So we end this journey not with answers, but with a mirror. What do you see when the lights are out and your thoughts grow still? Have you ever felt watched when you were alone? Heard your name in an empty room? We invite you to share your experience in the comments. Not for validation, but because in speaking of the unexplained, we create space for others to do the same. The more we listen, the more we realize that perhaps the veil between worlds isn't as thick as we once believed. Sleep well if you